On Christmas Eve morning, Jonathan Reed sat alone in his sleek corner office, the city skyline glinting through the frosty windows. His phone lay silent on the desk, the screen dark when he glanced at it. He had just finished the last conference call of the year. The charts and figures he had reviewed, the calm voices of his board members, and the polite clinking of virtual acknowledgements, all of it felt hollow now that the day was done. He leaned back in his chair and exhaled a long, slow breath. The polished wood under his fingers was smooth, but it offered no warmth. The office around him was quiet. A small artificial Christmas tree stood in one corner, its colored lights blinking in a steady pattern, but it looked lonely without ornaments or gifts beneath it. Jonathan had ordered the tree to cheer up the staff, but most people had left early to catch trains, flights, or car rides home. Their desks were empty. Now, chairs pushed in, computers asleep. He could almost hear the hum of the heating system and the faint whoosh of air conditioning. It was as though the building itself was holding its breath. He rose and walked over to the window. Below, the streets were busy with holiday traffic cars crawling forward, brake lights glowing red in the grey dawn. He watched a man in a Santa hat help a child steer a sled across the sidewalk, and a pair of co-workers laughed as they carried packages. In that moment, he realized how far he was from that simple joy. He remembered his parents wrapping presents late at night when he was a boy, the smell of pine and cinnamon filling their small living room. But that was long ago in another country, with people who no longer shared his life. A soft chime from the lobby elevator drew him back. He turned and picked up his suit jacket, draping it over his arm. He needed a break from the empty office. He tucked his phone into his pocket and stepped out into the hallway, his shoes clicking on the polished marble floor. The decoration in the hall was cheery garlands of evergreen and red ribbon looped along the railings, wreaths on the doors, but it all felt like a festival held for someone else. At the security desk, the guard looked up as Jonathan passed. "Merry Christmas, sir," the guard called. His voice was warm, but Jonathan simply nodded. He didn't trust his own voice at that moment. He gave the guard a small smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. The guard turned back to his monitor, and Jonathan continued on. He wished he could join his own family's Christmas, but they were many time zones away. He had not seen his sisters. Children unwrapped gifts or heard his mother laugh when she opened his present. Every year he told himself he would fly home for the holiday, but something always came up: an urgent meeting, a key decision, a client crisis. Work always felt more important. Yet, in the quiet of his office, he felt the cost of that choice. He stepped into the lobby cafe, a cozy nook set up for employees who needed a quick break. A few mismatched chairs and small tables sat around a counter serving hot drinks and pastries. The barista, wrapped in a green apron, greeted him with a polite smile. "What can I get you, Mr. Reed? A latte? Hot chocolate?" Jonathan paused, looking at the menu board decorated with snowflakes drawn in chalk. His usual order, a black coffee with 2 sugars, felt too plain today. He thought of something warmer, something that might cut through his chill. "A large chai tea, please," he said, surprising himself. The barista nodded and turned to prepare it. He carried his drink to a small table by the window. Outside, gentle snowflakes drifted down, coating the street in white. The chill on the glass made tiny droplets of fog where his breath had hit. He wrapped his hands around the cup, feeling the warmth seep into his palms. He sipped slowly, the spicy sweetness soothing the edge of his loneliness. Across the room, holiday music played softly, classic carols sung by a choir, familiar yet distant. The tinny speakers in the corner reminded him of mall decorations, but in this empty cafe, the carols sounded more like a promise than a performance. He watched as a young woman walked in, her head bent over her phone. She wore a simple coat and carried a small tote bag, its straps worn. She paused at the counter, ordered a cookie, and then scanned the room for a seat. Jonathan found himself observing her. He saw her eyes lift as she glanced at him. The man in the seat, alone in the festive space. He wondered what she thought. CEO too busy to go home? Or someone who chose this solitude? He noticed how she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, and the way her scarf fluttered as she turned. He felt a small pang. Was it curiosity or desire for company? The chai tea was gone faster than he expected. He set the empty cup down and stared out the window again. A child in a bright red snowsuit chased snowballs, and an elderly couple huddled under a shared umbrella, walking slowly. He realized he would never hear their laughter or feel that simple togetherness unless he crossed a line he had kept clear for so long. The barista called out a name, but Jonathan didn't move. He could wait, finish his work here, and leave without facing anyone. He could turn back to his desk and open the next report. But something held him still, something like hope. He rose and walked over to the counter. The young woman was paying for her cookie. He wondered what would happen if he spoke to her, if he stepped out of his comfort zone. For someone like him, a man used to giving orders, making decisions, leading teams, it was a strange feeling to be unsure of his next move. He straightened his jacket, smoothed his hair, and took a breath that felt too deep. The barista smiled and handed him a fresh chai tea, perhaps sensing his indecision. He accepted it and turned back toward the tables. As he passed the young woman, she looked up and smiled. It was a shy, tentative smile, but it reached her eyes. Jonathan stopped. The cafe was quiet, the only sound the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant murmur of the building's ventilation. "Excuse me," he said, his voice lower than he expected. He cleared his throat. "Is this seat taken?" She looked at the chair across from her and then back to him. She shook her head. "No, please, go ahead." He sat down, placing the chai tea on the table. He folded his hands in front of him, suddenly aware of how loud his own heartbeat sounded in his ears. The young woman closed her book and smiled. "I'm Mia," she said, offering her hand. "Jonathan," he replied, and shook her hand gently. He realized he had not introduced himself to a stranger in years. It felt both thrilling and terrifying. Mia's eyes danced with a friendly light. "Merry Christmas Eve," she said. "I didn't expect to see anyone else here so late." Jonathan smiled, a genuine curve of his lips that surprised him. "I guess I didn't expect company either." They sat in silence for a moment. Two people sharing the same room, the same quiet, the same holiday ache. Jonathan looked at Mia's warm coat and her bright eyes, and something in him shifted. He realized that even a simple dinner invitation could change everything. Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, two strangers shared a moment that neither of them would forget. Jonathan and Mia left the cafe together, stepping into the cold air. Snowflakes drifted down softly, landing on Jonathan's dark coat. He felt the chill but also a warm excitement. Mia glanced at him with a friendly smile. "I know a place nearby that's open on Christmas Eve," she said. "Would you like to join me for dinner?" Jonathan hesitated for a moment. He was used to making big decisions in boardrooms, but this felt different. It felt small, and yet it mattered more than any contract he had ever signed. He looked down the quiet street. The glow of streetlights made the falling snow sparkle. Steam rose from vents in the sidewalk, curling in the icy air. He remembered the trees at home, heavy with tinsel and lights, and his mother's voice singing carols as she worked in the kitchen. Here, he was a stranger, Would Mia think twice if she knew how alone he usually was? That Mia's invitation was genuine. Her eyes shone with kindness and her breath made small clouds in the cold. "I'd like that," he said finally. His voice was soft, and Mia's smile grew. They walked side by side. Jonathan noticed how Mia's boots made soft crunching sounds on the fresh snow. She wore a woolen hat that kept her ears warm, and a scarf the color of holly berries. Jonathan's tie was still neat under his coat, but he unbuttoned his jacket to look less formal. He didn't want to seem too stiff next to someone so easygoing. As they turned the corner, Mia pointed to a small diner with warm light spilling out of its windows. A few red boughs hung on the door, and the sign read, "Open Christmas Eve." Inside, a handful of customers sat at the counter, sipping coffee or eating pie. The bell above the door jingled as they entered. The air smelled of frying onions and baked bread. A waitress nodded at them. "Welcome. Table for two?" she asked. Jonathan and Mia nodded together, and the waitress led them to a booth by the window. The seat was cushioned and felt sturdy under him. Mia smoothed her coat and smiled at Jonathan. He opened the menu slowly. The pages were simple, with comfort foods listed in clear letters. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, chili, grilled cheese. He realized he had not thought about food all day. He usually ate a quick lunch at his desk. Tonight, he felt hungry in a way he had not felt in years. Mia closed her menu and said, "I'm getting the chili. It's my family's recipe." Jonathan looked up. "Your family recipe?" he asked, surprised. She nodded. "My mom makes chili every Christmas Eve. She adds sweet peppers and a little cocoa powder. It sounds strange, but it's delicious. She taught me how to make it when I was 16. Her eyes were bright. Jonathan found himself smiling back. "My family drank eggnog," he said quietly. "Back home, my aunt would whisk it until it was frothy. Then we'd sprinkle nutmeg on top." He watched Mia's face as he spoke. She listened and nodded, as if she could picture his aunt in a big kitchen. Mia leaned forward. "Tell me more about where you grew up," she said. "I want to know." Her tone was gentle. Jonathan took a breath. He was used to talking about numbers and profit margins, not childhood memories. But her interest gave him courage. He told her about his small hometown by the sea, where the air smelled of salt and pine. He spoke of simple houses with red roofs and gardens where his grandmother grew herbs. He described the narrow streets and colorful market stalls that sold spices and fruit. Mia listened closely, her eyes wide, as snow drifted past the diner window. When he finished, Mia smiled softly. "It sounds beautiful," she said. "You must miss it." Jonathan looked at his hands on the table. "I do," he admitted. "But work kept me here." His voice trembled a little. He did not like to admit that. Mia reached out and placed her hand over his. Her glove was soft. "Sometimes work can wait," she said. "And sometimes we need to make time for people. For moments like this." He felt a jolt at her words. He realized she was right. His life had been about meetings and deadlines, but not about moments. The waitress returned with 2 steaming bowls of chili. The rich aroma of tomato and spices filled the booth. Mia's eyes lit up. She scooped a spoonful and tasted it, closing her eyes. "Perfect," she sighed. "Just like home." Jonathan picked up a spoon and tasted. The flavors mingled warmly. In his mouth, there was a hint of sweetness and spice, and the soft beans felt gentle on his tongue. He nodded. "This is wonderful." They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Jonathan realized how relaxed he felt. Mia hummed a Christmas tune under her breath. He noticed the curve of her lips and the way her hair framed her face in soft waves. It was strange to notice such things after he had spent so much time focused on his work. Mia broke the silence. "What do you usually do on Christmas Eve?" she asked. Jonathan thought. "I usually stay in my office until I finish one more report," he said. "Then I go up to my apartment. I watch a movie alone, maybe call someone, and then I sleep." He looked at Mia. "It's sad sounding, I know." Mia shook her head. "It doesn't sound sad. It sounds honest." She paused, her eyes kind. "This year you have company." Jonathan's heart skipped. He looked at her. Her hand was still on his. He realized he did not want her to let go. He swallowed and then asked, "What about you?" Mia smiled. "After my shift, I go home to my parents. My dad always does dishes, and my mum plays the piano. We sing carols together before we open presents at midnight." She laughed quietly. "They said I should be home by now, but I didn't want to miss this." Jonathan felt something warm in his chest, like a small fire. He was glad she chose to stay. He wished he could show her his home one day, the place he had left behind. But perhaps he thought home was not just a place. Perhaps home was a feeling, and he felt that feeling now. They finished their meal, and the waitress brought plates of warm bread. Mia tore a piece and offered it to Jonathan. They ate quietly, watching the snow and the other diners. A family with a small child waved as they passed by the window. The child's cheeks were pink, and she held a stuffed reindeer. Mia waved back, and the child waved enthusiastically. Jonathan grinned. Few minutes later, Jonathan leaned back. He felt full in his stomach and in his heart. He realized he had forgotten about his reports, his deadlines, even his loneliness. He looked at Mia. "Thank you," he said, "for dinner and for the company." Mia smiled. "Thank you for coming with me," she replied. "I was nervous to ask, but I'm glad I did." Jonathan took a breath. "Would you like to walk a bit more? The park down the street has lights." He pointed toward the entrance of a small park, where strings of white lights hung from the trees. Mia's eyes lit up. "I'd love that." They paid the bill, left a tip, and stepped back into the snow. The wind was calm, and the flakes drifted around them gently. They walked side by side again, talking about small things, favorite movies, childhood games, funny memories. Jonathan laughed at some of Mia's stories, and she laughed at his. Each laugh felt like glue, binding their moment together. As they approached the park, Jonathan felt a glow inside him. The lights in the trees looked like stars caught in branches. He realized that this night, this simple act of kindness, had given him something he thought he would never have again. Joy that came from sharing. Mia paused at the park gate and looked at Jonathan. "Merry Christmas Eve," she said softly. Jonathan met her gaze. "Merry Christmas Eve," he replied. They stepped inside together, and the park lights welcomed them both into a new kind of warmth. Snow crunched softly under Jonathan's feet as he and Mia walked deeper into the little park. Each branch overhead shone with strings of white lights, and the air felt crisp and alive. Jonathan breathed in, feeling a spark of joy he had not known for years. He looked at Mia, whose face glowed in the soft light. Somehow, the world seemed kinder tonight. Mia stopped under a tree and reached into her coat pocket. She pulled out 2 small paper lanterns, each shaped like a star. "My grandmother taught me how to do this," she said, her voice warm. "We write a wish on the lantern, then send it off into the air." She handed one lantern to Jonathan and took the other herself. Jonathan studied the lantern. It was made of thin paper in a soft gold hue, with space to scrawl a message. He felt a rush of gratitude toward Mia for sharing this tradition. He thought of his family far away, and the years he had spent chasing success. In that moment, he knew exactly what he wanted to write. He pulled out a pen Mia handed him and wrote, "I wish for true friendship and moments of warmth, no matter where I am." When he finished, he folded the paper gently and placed it back on the wooden frame. Mia smiled and wrote on her lantern, then slipped her note inside. They crouched side by side, holding the lanterns just above the snow. Mia lit the small candle below her paper star, and its flame danced in the gentle breeze. Jonathan lit his too, his heart pounding as he watched the candle's glow spread warmth under the paper. The lantern's light seemed to chase away the cold. After a moment, Mia stood and held her lantern aloft. She sighed happily. "Ready?" she asked. Jonathan nodded, his cheeks pink from the chill, and from something new blossoming inside him. Together, they released the lanterns. The paper drafts lifted the glowing stars into the dark sky. Jonathan watched his wish drift upward, the flames steady until the lantern disappeared from sight. They stood quietly, watching until the lanterns were gone. Then Mia turned to him, laughter in her eyes. "That was beautiful," she said. "Thank you for doing that with me." Jonathan felt a lump in his throat. He managed to smile. "Thank you for asking me," he replied. They continued walking along the lighted path. The park was almost empty now, and the lanterns had gone. But something in the air felt different, as if the world held its breath for them. Jonathan felt lighter with each step. He realized he had spent so long building walls around himself that he nearly forgot how to connect with another human being. Mia stopped by a wooden bench and sat down. Jonathan joined her. They sat side by side, watching their own breaths fog in the cold air. A soft hush settled over the park as the lights above flickered in the wind. Mia turned to Jonathan, her eyes bright in the glow. "Tell me more about your day," she said gently. Jonathan chuckled, surprised. "My day was full of charts, emails, and meetings," he said. "Honestly, nothing special until I met you." Mia's face lit up. "I'm glad I interrupted your routine," she teased. Jonathan grinned back. "Best interruption of my life." He took a deep breath and then spoke softly. "I've spent most of my career building this company," he said. "I thought success would make me happy, but I've been so busy chasing numbers that I forgot what truly matters." He paused, then looked at Mia. "Until tonight, I didn't realize how lonely I was." Mia placed her hand over his. Her touch was warm. "I think it takes courage to admit that," she said. "You've achieved so much, but you're brave enough to see what you need." Jonathan looked at her, moved by her kindness. "You make it easy to be honest," he replied. "I feel like I can tell you anything." Mia smiled and leaned back, looking up at the lights above. "My story is simple," she said. "I work here as an intern. I love my family and my friends. But sometimes I feel small in a big world." She laughed softly. "Tonight, I felt brave enough to ask a stranger to dinner." She turned to him. "Because I believed in kindness." Jonathan nodded. He realized how much he admired her gentle strength. He wanted to protect that kindness, to share more moments like this with her. He brushed a piece of snow off his coat. "I believe in kindness too," he said. "And I believe in you." They sat in silence for a moment, two souls connected in the gentle hush of the park. Then Mia reached into her bag and pulled out 2 cups of cocoa she had bought earlier. She passed one to Jonathan. He cradled the warm cup in his hands, savoring the sweet steam. "This is my favorite cocoa," she said. "My aunt makes it with a dash of cinnamon." Jonathan took a sip and smiled. "It's perfect," he said. The sweet warmth spread through him. As they sipped, Mia spotted a small group of homeless friends she volunteered with. They waved from a nearby bench. Mia stood and waved back. I promised them I'd drop by to say hi, she said. Jonathan looked at the group and felt a pang of empathy. He had never stopped to think beyond his own world. Let's go, he said. Mia led him toward the group. The men and women greeted Mia with hugs and smiles. They welcomed Jonathan shyly. Mia introduced him. This is Jonathan, she said. He's my friend. The group smiled and offered Jonathan a seat. He sat and listened as they shared stories of their own traditions, their own hopes. Jonathan realized how little he knew of the world outside. His office. He listened as an older man spoke of making paper stars to hang from a tree, and a young woman described singing carols while cooking stew for neighbors. Jonathan felt humbled. He offered to buy them hot meals after the holidays. They thanked him gratefully. When he left to return Mia's hand to her, he felt a fullness in his heart. He turned to Mia. Thank you for sharing this, he said. You've opened my eyes. Mia smiled. That's what friends are for, she replied. They walked back toward the exit, the park lights dimming as they passed. The snow had slowed, and the world felt still. Jonathan paused at the gate. He looked at Mia, his eyes shining. Merry Christmas, he said softly. Merry Christmas, she replied. They parted at the park gate, each carrying a piece of the night's warmth inside. Jonathan walked back to his apartment with a light step, his mind brimming with new ideas of kindness, friendship, and a life richer than any balance sheet. And Mia returned home, her heart happy, knowing she changed one lonely CEO's Christmas with a simple invitation. Snow had stopped falling by the next morning, and the city streets sparkled under a pale sun. Jonathan Reed woke in his apartment to a quiet calm. He stretched and remembered the night before. The diner, the lanterns, the park, and the people Mia had introduced him to. He smiled, surprised by the warmth that filled him. He glanced at his phone and saw several missed calls and messages from his assistant, but none of that felt urgent now. He dressed quickly in a casual sweater and jeans clothes he had not worn in months. He picked up his phone and typed a message. To Mia. Thank you for last night. I'd like to invite you and your friends to dinner tonight at my place. She replied almost at once. I'd love that. They'll be thrilled. See you at 6. Jonathan felt a flutter of nerves. He was used to arranging high-powered meetings, not welcome dinners for a group of people he barely knew. But he also felt excitement. The empty apartment suddenly seemed full of possibility. At the office, he arrived early. The lobby was decorated with holiday wreaths, but something had changed in his view. He no longer felt like an outsider to the seasons. He greeted the guard with a bright, "Good morning," and the guard returned the greeting with surprise and pleasure. Jonathan's steps felt lighter as he walked to his office. He paused by the receptionist's desk. He spoke with a confidence he hardly recognized. I'll be leaving early today, he said. Please tell anyone looking for me that I'll be out after 4 p.m. The receptionist smiled, curious. Holiday plans? She asked. Yes, Jonathan replied. A special dinner. Back in his office, he shut his door and focused on today's work. He handled calls, approved budgets, and guided his team through small challenges. But none of it felt draining. Even the most tedious tasks seemed brighter because of what awaited him. At 3:30 p.m., he packed up files and turned off his computer. He left the building and took a short walk to a grocery store. He carried a small canvas bag and picked up items with care. Fresh bread, ripe tomatoes, garlic, basil, eggs, cheese, and a bottle of juice. He chose simple ingredients for a homemade pasta. He also grabbed hot chocolate mix and colorful mugs. On his way home, he stopped at a flower shop. He picked a small bouquet of white lily and wrapped them in brown paper. He thought of the guests Mia, and the friends from the park and how a simple gift could show his gratitude. Back at the apartment, he set the table near the living room window. He placed the lily in a glass vase at the center. He arranged plates and utensils and laid out the mugs. He could smell the snow melting outside, even through the closed windows. He turned on soft music, gentle piano, and favorite carols so that when his guests arrived, the air would feel warm and welcoming. At exactly 6 p.m., the doorbell rang. Jonathan opened the door to Mia standing there with two of her friends, the ones he had met in the park. Mia's eyes lit up when she saw the apartment. One friend carried a small box of homemade cookies. Another held a thermos of spiced cider. Mia wore her wool coat and held a paper bag with a gingerbread loaf peeking out. Jonathan invited them in. "Welcome," he said, ushering them into the living room. "I'm so happy you could come." They took off their coats and smiled at the lily on the table. One friend said, "This is lovely." Mia nodded. "It's perfect, Jonathan." They gathered around the table as Jonathan set pots on the stove. He explained he would make simple pasta with fresh tomato sauce and garlic bread. The friends laughed when he admitted he wasn't a master chef but was trying his best. Mia stepped forward. "Let me help," she said. She washed her hands at the sink. The others pitched in, setting napkins and pouring juice into glasses. Jonathan boiled water for the pasta and chopped garlic. Mia stirred the sauce and added basil, humming a carol. One friend sliced bread, and another arranged the cookies on a small plate. The apartment filled with delicious smells: garlic, tomato, warm bread, and sweet gingerbread. When the pasta was ready, Jonathan drained it and mixed it with the sauce in a large bowl. He brought it to the table and placed it in front of the guests. "Dig in," he said. They passed the bowl around and served themselves. Each bite brought soft smiles and gentle murr sounds. Jonathan felt proud and relieved. They ate and shared stories. Mia's friends talked about their own families and traditions. One friend spoke of her dog, who wore a bright red sweater for Christmas. The other spoke of learning to paint ornaments with her nieces. Jonathan listened, fascinated by their everyday joys. Then Mia turned to him. "What about your family?" she asked. Jonathan paused. He thought of his sister and nieces far away, the laughter he missed, the cookie baking he had never joined because work kept him busy. He spoke honestly. "I spent many years choosing work over home. I missed birthdays, holidays, even funerals. I thought success was measured in hours at the office." His words hung in the air. Mia reached out and touched his hand. "You can still be with family," she said gently. "You can make new families too." Jonathan smiled and squeezed her hand. He realized she spoke truth. Family was connection, not just blood. After dinner, they cleared the table together. Jonathan washed dishes while Mia dried them. The others put away plates. They laughed when water splashed and when the soap bubbled high. The kitchen felt like a warm bubble in the winter night. Once the dishes were done, they returned to the living room. Jonathan brought out hot chocolate in his new mugs, and they each took one. The rich steam curled above the cups. They sipped slowly, savoring the sweetness. One friend said, "This is the best Christmas I've had in years." Mia nodded. "Me too," she said softly. Jonathan felt tears in his eyes. He had given a simple dinner, but in return he received heartfelt gratitude. He realized that kindness, even small, changed lives. They moved to the couch and sat close together. The lily glowed softly in the vase. Outside, darkness settled, and snow began to fall again. The city lights blurred through the windows. Inside, the apartment was full of warmth, laughter, and gentle voices. Mia stood and opened the window just a crack. The cold air whispered in. She held out her hand and felt snowflakes land on her palm. She closed her hand around them and then looked at Jonathan. "Snow," she said. Smiling, Jonathan joined her by the window. He reached out and caught one snowflake on his glove. It melted instantly. He watched the dance of snow outside. "It's like the city is celebrating with us," he said. Mia leaned against his shoulder. "Yes," she said. "It feels like magic." Jonathan nodded. He realized he believed in magic too, magic made by human kindness. As the hour grew late, Mia and her friends prepared to leave. They hugged Jonathan warmly. One friend whispered, "Thank you for this. You're part of our family now." Jonathan felt a warmth that filled him to his core. He smiled through tears. "Thank you all," he said. "You've given me a gift beyond measure." Mia paused at the door. She turned and looked at him. "Merry Christmas," she said. Jonathan met her gaze. "Merry Christmas," he replied. After they left, Jonathan closed the door and turned off the lights. The apartment was quiet again, but it no longer felt empty. The lily still stood on the table and the mug sat on the couch. He walked to the window and watched the snow. His heart felt full. He whispered to himself, "Home is here." Then he went to his desk, opened his laptop, and drafted an email to his sister. "Merry Christmas. I miss you. I'm learning to make time for moments, for family, for kindness. I love you." He hit send. Jonathan Reed stood by the window, snow falling softly, and felt a peace he had never known. A simple dinner had opened his heart, and he knew that this Christmas he had discovered. Jonathan woke on New Year's Day to the sound of laughter drifting in through his slightly open window. He blinked and realized the apartment was warm, not silent as before. He stretched and went to the living room, where Mia sat on the couch, sipping coffee and watching the soft light of dawn. She smiled when she saw him. "Good morning," she said quietly. He returned her smile, feeling a lightness in his chest. "Good morning," he replied. He joined her with his own mug of coffee. The cups were still the same festive mugs from Christmas Eve. He noticed a small piece of folded paper on the table. Mia slid it toward him. "It's from my friends," she said. "They suggested we volunteer today at the shelter, but didn't want to wake you." Jonathan unfolded the note. It read, "Thank you for including us. Let's spread more kindness together." He felt a warmth flood through him. He looked at Mia. "Let's go," he said. They dressed quickly and walked to the nearby shelter, where Mia and her friends served meals. The building was modest but full of life. Inside, volunteers greeted visitors and long tables were set with warm plates of stew and bread. Jonathan paused at the door, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. He was used to running a company, not serving meals. Mia squeezed his hand. "I'll show you around," she said. They joined a line of volunteers. Mia introduced Jonathan to her friends, who cheered at seeing him. They showed him how to ladle soup into bowls and place bread beside each plate. Jonathan took a deep breath and stepped forward, offering his first bowl to a kind-faced woman, who thanked him warmly. As he served more people, he felt a connection to each face. A young father holding his daughter, an elderly man who told him about his days as a carpenter, a woman who smiled brightly despite hardship. Jonathan listened to their stories, surprised by how easily conversation flowed when he was simply present. After the meal service, they cleared tables together. Jonathan stacked plates and washed dishes while chatting with other volunteers. The work was simple but meaningful. He realized that leadership could also mean offering help, not just making decisions. By midday, the shelter buzzed with energy. Mia and Jonathan handed out extra coats and blankets donated for winter. They packed small care packages with socks, hats, and snacks. Jonathan felt pride in the team effort. He thought of his own walls, now breaking down. When they finished, Mia's friends invited Jonathan to join them for a quick lunch of sandwiches in the shelter's break room. They talked about plans for the new year, study groups, community cleanups, and more volunteer days. Jonathan listened and promised to participate. As they left the shelter, the sky was clear, the sun reflecting off patches of snow. Mia looked at Jonathan. "How do you feel?" she asked. He paused, thinking. "I feel alive," he said softly. "I've spent so much time alone, chasing success. But today I felt needed. I felt part of something." He smiled at her. "Thank you for guiding me." Mia reached for his hand. "You did the work," she said. "I just showed you the way." Over the next weeks, their friendship deepened. Jonathan invited Mia to his office where she met his team. He introduced her not as an intern, but as a friend who inspired him. He organized a company volunteer day at the shelter, and half his staff joined. He saw employees smiling as they served food, talking with strangers, and bonding over shared purpose. At home, Jonathan's apartment filled with mementos of kindness. A framed photo of lanterns floating in the park, the holiday mugs, and cards from shelter guests. He found joy in arranging fresh flowers on his table and cooking simple meals. His phone, once silent, now buzzed with invitations from new friends. One afternoon, he surprised Mia with a small gift, a scrapbook he had made, filled with photos and notes from Christmas Eve and New Year's Day. He had printed pictures of the diner, the park lanterns, the dinner table, and snapshots from the shelter. On the last page, he had glued a plain ticket stub. Mia opened the scrapbook, her eyes shining. Jonathan pointed to the stub. "I booked a ticket home for me," he said, "and one for you, if you'd like to come. My family wants to meet the friend who changed my life." Mia gasped softly, then laughed through happy tears. "I would love that," she said. A month later, Jonathan and Mia boarded a plane together. They flew across time zones to his childhood home, a coastal town with red-roofed houses and gardens bursting with herbs. His parents greeted them at the small airport. His mother hugged him tightly, tears in her eyes, and then stepped back to take Mia in her arms. "Mia, you are welcome in our home," his mother said. "Thank you for bringing my son back to us." Jonathan's father shook Mia's hand and said, "You have given him a gift beyond words." That evening, they gathered in the old kitchen. The table was laden with dishes. His aunt's eggnog, his grandmother's roast, and Mia's special chili. They laughed as they passed plates, and Jonathan realized he had a new family, now one that was built by love and kindness. After dinner, they stepped out into the garden where lanterns hung from trees, just like the ones Mia had taught him. He held Mia's hand, and they released 2 lanterns together. The stars in the sky twinkled as each glowing wish floated upward. Jonathan looked at Mia, his heart full. He whispered, "This is what Christmas should always be." Mia nodded, tears shining. "And New Year's too." They returned inside and sang carols with his parents by the fireplace. Jonathan picked up a guitar and strummed softly as Mia sang. Their voices blended with his parents, creating a harmony that felt like home. In that moment, Jonathan understood that success was not about numbers or power. Success was the ability to connect, to share warmth, and to build bridges between hearts. He no longer felt the ache of loneliness. He had found companionship in Mia and a renewed bond with his family. Years later, Jonathan and Mia returned to that same park each Christmas Eve. They invited friends, colleagues, and shelter guests, They posted signs that read, "All are welcome," and set up tables of food, hot drinks, and music. In the soft glow of lanterns and fairy lights, strangers became friends, and the park became a home for many. Jonathan would often take Mia's hand and lead her to the spot where they first released lanterns. He would look into her eyes and remember the loneliness he once felt and how a simple invitation had transformed his life. One Christmas Eve, as they stood under the lights, Jonathan whispered to Mia, "Will you marry me?" Mia smiled through happy tears and nodded. They released a heart-shaped lantern together, and it rose into the sky, carrying their promise. Under the glow of stars and lanterns, surrounded by community and family, Jonathan realized that one kind, Act 1 dinner invitation, could change the course of a life. And his life, once defined by loneliness, was now defined by love, friendship, and shared warmth that would carry him through every season to come.